and a knowledge base and a passion for working with the community. We've had people, like Ollie, that have volunteered for almost 50 years.
And while the world has changed a bit since then, there's one thing that's stayed the same.
No change in gardening. You don't have things changing all of a sudden with vegetables. Carrots a carrot, tomatoes a tomato.
Even though Ollie's not as mobile as he used to be, he still finds a way to help out.
It's amazing that our volunteers can volunteer so long. Some of our volunteers spend a lot of time in the office answering questions over the computer or over the telephone or meeting people face to face.
And Ollie's going to continue lending his knowledge and picking up badges along the way.
There it is right there. 1978. Makes use of what I have. I hate to just let it sit. Might as well use it somehow. You gotta keep going until you can't go anymore.
There's been another deadly shooting at a local elementary school. According to authorities, the suspect acquired the gun from a family member's home before using it to take the lives of innocent children and teachers.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
Okay, welcome to the Pierce County Public Safety Committee meeting today. It's the date is March 10th, 2025, and the time is 1:31. Clerk, can you please call a roll?
Yes. Councilmember Yombe.
Here.
Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
Councilmember Hitchin. Here. Councilmember Denson. Here. And Councilmember Herrera.
And I'm here.
You have 5 members present.
We have 5 members present, and we have a quorum. Item number 3, approval of agenda. Do we need to change who's on there at all? I just need to. So it looks like we need to change the speakers, both speakers for the agenda. We have for Sandy Williamson is a citizen member that might be presenting, or is?
Is.
Okay, is. And then the Marine Services are going to strike Bill Foster and add
Detective Monty Minion.
Yeah, Monty Minion to the agenda. So other than that, any other adjustments? All right. No?
I'm here.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So we're on the agenda. Any other adjustments? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved. And for the record, we have Councilmember Coover, who's here as a guest. Thank you. Item number 4, approval of the minutes for February 24th, 2025. Any edits or corrections on those? Hearing none, the minutes for February 24th, 2025 are approved. All right, we're in boating today. So item number 5, we're going to start off with the Boating Advisory Commission annual report. And I'll have Ms. Kelly to introduce us. Let's go.
Thank you, Chair Herrera and committee members. For the record, Andrea Kelly, council staff. Included in your packet, you have both the slide deck that's going to be used in today's presentation and a copy of the 2024 Boating Advisory Commission report. In reviewing the slides, I believe the presentation is going to include an overview of the BAC's tasks and duties pursuant to code. So I'm not going to belabor that, but I will remind the committee of the membership terms and the commission composition. The BAC is a 7-member commission. Members are appointed by the exec and confirmed by council, serving for 4-year terms. There is a 2 consecutive term limit. It is voluntary. There is no compensation, and members must meet 1 or more of the following requirements: reside at or own a property with access to a body of water in Pierce County, own a boat registered in Pierce County, have professional experience in marine services or water recreation related industry, demonstrate a history of participation in non-motorized watercraft recreation such as, but not limited to, canoeing, dragon boating, kayaking, paddle boarding, or rowing. And then lastly, at least 3 members shall reside at or own a property with access to lake taps. So in addition to Citizen Commission member Sandy Williamson, we also have present detectives Bill Foster and Monty Minion with the Sheriff's Office, in addition to citizen members Adam Gregorich and Jeffrey Lincoln.
Awesome. Thanks for the excellent introduction. It's really, we have had many commissions, but I don't think that the profession, being a subject matter expert in boating, I mean, you heard the list of you got to have a boat, live by some water, and all these things. So I can only imagine that our commissioners are very, very well in tune to the boating thing. So welcome, and come on up. And we really appreciate you coming out today. This commission, it's all about us. You're going to let us know all about safety and everything else, and what you're seeing out there in Pierce County and all our lakes, not just 1, 2, or 3, but many. So welcome.
Okay. So I'm Sandy Williamson. If you turn to the last page of the slides, if you can, you'll see the names that were called. Adam and Jeff are here, and we think Dwayne is online, and Susan is out of state somewhere, and I'm not sure about Steve. So a little background so in the code, you may not know this, but 70% of boating marine safety funds are supposed to spend on lake taps. We have 4 of the 7 members have to be from lake taps. And so we spend a lot of time talking about lake taps. for appropriate reasons. For example, I live on Spanaway Lake. We have 160 homeowners that are on the lake. It's about 250 acres. Lake Tapps is close to 10 times that many of both. So it is appropriate to have that kind of focus. So as our very competent council staff person told you about our requirements, I won't review that. Our job is, we've been going at it about 3 years. A little background, you may not be aware. There was a previous boating advisory committee. I don't know exactly why they disbanded, but there were none, and we were all sort of brought on at the same time. We have one vacancy because we were 7, and we had a resignation in the past few months. So we're supposed to conduct public meetings, at least 2 a year in the spring and fall. We had a public meeting last Wednesday and had about 4 or 5 members present at the police station in Parkland, and I think maybe 8 or so online. And meeting, we got quite a few public comments, and some of which we had already anticipated and are sort of involved in these recommendations, some of which we haven't addressed yet. And I'm comfortable with you asking questions anytime. Councilmember Morrell was at our public meeting last Wednesday, by the way.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll invite all committee members to ask questions anytime, so feel free.
Okay, so I'm on slide 2. And I think I pretty much covered this, and we're going to keep going, so in the interest of saving your time. So slide 3, the executive summary. So some of the issues are related to technical stuff. So we actually have 2 representatives of the Water Sports Industry Association for the U.S. that we have contacted and gotten maps and they've actually mapped some of our lakes for us. It's a pretty active council because they want to keep selling $350,000 wakeboard boats. Surprise, surprise. So they've been very helpful. And okay, so I wanted to can we turn the next slide? So I wanted to make sure we were all aware of the difference between wakeboarding and wake surfing. So the guy on the right that's wake surfing, that wave can be this high. So it creates, they go slow. They sometimes have 4,000 pounds of water added to the boat when they go. So they're designed to make a giant hole in the water. They're taller so they can be deeper in the water. The bigger the hole in the water, the bigger the wake. They go slow, 10, 12 miles an hour, not like a ski boat that might be going 35. Wakeboarding sort of in between. So it has some ballast, and they like waves, but not quite as big. Because you'll see this guy on the right is not holding a rope. He's just surfing like you would in the ocean, but it's a man-made wave. Any questions on that? So a lot of our debate has been about how to minimize the damage of these wakes on the shoreline. So we are about a year into discussing all the things we could do. We said, let's figure out the low-hanging fruit and let's try and propose some amendments to the county rules, whatever they call them, that would help our police officers in doing their job. So the first one is about wake damage, and currently it's a state law. There's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit within 200 feet of shore. So several of our recommendations are related to that. On the freeway, it's very easy for a policeman to use a radar gun. In a boat, since it's not linear, you really can't use a radar gun. So what we have proposed is in the county ordinance, in addition to the state 5-mile rule, a no-wake zone, basically. And we actually did our own testing of various kind of boats and how big the wake was 200 feet out, how big the wake was 100 feet out, and how it, you know, so a pretty large wake at 200 feet becomes much smaller at the shoreline. Okay, I'm ready to go to the next slide. Unless there's questions about that, because we have 5 recommendations, so go ahead.
We got some here. Committee Member Denson.
Yes, thank you for your service on this commission. Just a quick question. I assume this is an issue that is that people throughout the country are dealing with. Did you have an opportunity to look at regulations that other jurisdictions around the United States have put in place?
Yeah, in particular Tennessee and one of the Great Lakes states. I don't remember which one.
Alabama's done a lot.
And Alabama.
So is your recommendation similar to what they've done that they've perhaps?
Well, we haven't quite gone as far, but in the same vein.
Okay.
So we anticipate maybe going further later, and we can talk about that at the end.
Okay.
And these guys will, I'm hopefully, whack me or something, cough or something, so if I miss something.
There's actually another recommendation.
If you're gonna,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to come to the mic because it's gonna get on the record. If you want to come on up.
There's another recommendation further on related to this topic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions? So I had one real quick. You had any more? Yeah. What's the difference between the lakes and, you know, the Commencement Bay? There's all kinds of no wake zones that are already posted, that are already enforced. When you start coming into our sensitive areas in the Port of Tacoma, the big ships that come in here got to slow way down because of all the same issues, the erosions, the safety of it. What is the difference between the salt and the lakes?
Much bigger boats, which make much bigger wakes.
Sure.
And we know Pierce County has jurisdiction on the saltwater part of Pierce County. We really have not addressed that because we sort of had our hands full dealing with the lakes. And the density of boats per square whatever is much higher on lakes. Some of us have quite a bit of experience out there as well. But the percentage of people that are violating the law out there is much less than on our lakes. So that's another reason we focused on the lakes. You know, the Coast Guard's out there patrolling every day, and that makes a difference. They have machine guns on their boats. That scared my 10-year-old pretty bad.
My goodness.
Because they have to, you know, deal with drug runners and, you know, stuff that we don't have to worry about on the lake.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're up to so there's photos here on the next page which show a wakeboard boat that could be a wake surf boat. They look pretty similar. So we, just to clarify, we have been talking about the activity, not the boat, because there's so many different kinds of boats. We don't want to focus on boats. We want to focus on the activities those boats do, and the activities more define the damaging wake that boat produces. So there's a photograph of a boat wake hitting a bulkhead. Almost all of us, so interestingly enough, the code regulations really recommend natural shorelines, and you get points for that, and I can't remember all the details of that, but most of us have bulkheads that are oftentimes wood and sometimes concrete because of erosion from wakes like that. And sometimes those bulkheads are damaged at the cost of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So it's a serious issue. Okay, recommendation number 2. Rafting is, I think, only crowding and rafting. So rafting is tying boats together and partying. And you can imagine that these boats have speakers that if we were playing it, you could hear it out in the sound. big speakers that play really loud. And so you can imagine if you live on one of these coves that's attractive, and over history, this has been the attractive cove, and then there's been something between the police and signage and other things to make it move to another location. So that's a bit of a moving target. So rafting, so what they've done is, and I'm not on Lake Tapps, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but they, and I'll speak it into the microphone. When they're tied up, the Marine Services unit, I think, can make them untie, right? So what they've done is just be nearby. So they're not violating the law, but they're still having the same impact. Not quite as bad because it's not quite as dense. So that's the crowding issue. So here's the recommendations. And this one, the first or the second one actually has a cost. So there are areas, the deeper the water, the less disturbance there is. So there are areas that have deeper water and away from dense housing that we'd like to attract anchoring and drifting these activities. But currently they have a lot of wave action. So we propose in this one, and it's going to be budget dependent. We have no idea what our budget is if we have a budget. Wave barriers that are floating and they break down the waves to more attract boats to raft in that area as opposed to the area with dense housing and damaging wake issues. So we haven't gone into the details because we didn't really know what the details were.
Do I stand next to you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I don't know all the rules. Detective Bill Foster, I'm with Pierce County Sheriff's Department, or excuse me, office now. I am part of the Marine Services Unit, and some clarifications on crowding and rafting on the lake. There are certain areas on the lake you cannot raft. That is taking two vessels, tying them up together, and letting two vessels sit side by side. There are areas on the lake you can do that. That rafting area is very choppy, it is away from everyone else, but there's no way to stop the waves from damaging the boats, from hitting each other. We have talked about it in the past with the council several years ago about maybe putting up some type of water barrier off of Dike 4 so they could have something where the families could raft and have a safe place without damaging expensive vessels. So that's what he was talking about, certain coves. There are coves, you cannot do that, and we do have citations for that. For rafting on the lake, it is very expensive. It's about a $650 citation NOI to raft on Lake Tapps. So there are already rules in place for that. But you cannot push people out of nice, calm coves and put them out in the middle of all the wakes. And that's just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Bill. That's helpful.
Thank you, Seth.
Questions for me or Bill on that one, or we'll move on to number 3.
Any questions?
So number 3 is pretty interesting because I first read this in the Pierce County Code maybe 15 years ago after I'd lived on Spanaway Lake for a while. The code actually specifies areas on Lake Tapps as well as behind the island on Spanaway Lake where you're allowed to exceed the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit by skiing to or from your dock. But you can imagine how difficult this is to enforce because the police don't know which boat belongs to which dock. So it basically makes that whole area unenforceable for speed limits. Primarily, the people that do that are water skiers. They're typically older because that's what we grew up with. And so they typically want to do it early in the morning when the lake itself is calm. So what we recommended is to limit this exception to the rule to only 6 to 10 a.m., which is basically sunrise to 10 a.m. And I think that's a pretty, to me, that's like a no-brainer slam dunk that we should do, because there's really no downside. There would be some minor signage cost.
And we got a question from Committee Member Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. And somebody tell me, okay.
Yep.
I just don't have a light, so I wasn't confused.
You're up.
So this is, I take off from my dock, like I'm seated on my dock, pulled off my dock. I've seen that done with like wakeboarders and skiers. And then they're within the no wake zone, but because it's during this time window and it's their dock, we're going to allow it.
Yes. Now it's allowed all the time.
Okay.
Except for at night.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. And it is wakeboarders too, but it's much more common with skiers.
People looking for glass.
Yeah. The photograph that's the next slide is just an example of not rafting, because those boats are tied together. If they were rafting, they'd be tied together. They're just, what's the term for it? Drifting. So some of them would be anchored, some are just drifting, and occasionally they turn their motor on to stay in the same place. Okay, so recommendation 4 is regulation of wake surfing. So it looks to me like we got the title wrong, because we talked about boats. I think we missed that, but anyway, we'll come back to that. The activity is wake surfing, and we are proposing limiting that, outlawing it on Class C and D lakes. So I think you have a table, the next page, that shows what lakes are what class. It's based on size. So Class C and D are below 100 acres. For example, Spanaway and Stillicum. Stillicum's not in Pierce County, it's in Lakewood. But just to give you an idea, if you've been there, they're about 250 to 300 acres. Lake Tapps is like 1,700, I think. And you can see the other lakes are listed. So the smaller lakes, we're recommending, there's no safe place for wake surfing without damaging shoreline.
And we have another question.
We also recommend changing the code to prohibit it, wake surfing, after sunset and before sunrise. Although it's technically already not allowed because it's supposed to be 5 miles an hour at night, but this makes it more clear that so you don't, the Marine Services unit, were they out there after dark, wouldn't have to do any speed examination when they saw the activity, because that wake is very noticeable.
Okay. I've got a question from one of the committee members, Committee Member Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Williamson, you may not know the answer to this. This may be more for staff or the Sheriff's Office. Wondering about the notification if we were to adopt something like this. I saw Lake Josephine, which is on Anderson Island. I represent them. Would we send notification to all the property owners about a change? I'm just thinking of somebody who just bought a $350,000 wake surfing boat might be upset if he didn't find out ahead of time that we were thinking about this.
Detective Bill Foster again.
Thank you.
I do believe the council has to send that notice out to the individuals. It wouldn't be up to the Sheriff's Department. One other thing would be if you want to put notices out at the boat launches, that could be done, and we could work on something with that.
Okay. So as
it's not like it's going to be night and day. Those places are not great already, and I suspect, I don't know that we as a group have much evidence of that, but I suspect there's not much of those activities on those lakes already.
Yeah. So yeah.
Can I add something to this real quick? Adam Gregorich. To be clear, we're not saying prohibit the boat. We're saying prohibit the activity. So if someone with a surf boat wanted to go out on a pleasure cruise, sunset cruise, whatever, fishing, go inner tubing with the kids or whatever, totally fine. We're just saying the specific activity of surfing is not appropriate for a lake of that size. And this also ties back to the question earlier about kind of specific recommendations. And this is one actually that we actually got working with the Water Sports Industry Association. The Tennessee law that Sandy mentioned earlier was prohibiting surfing on smaller lakes, that when we kind of translated that to Pierce County Code were those C and D lakes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Adam, it would be wise if you would.
Excuse me, sir.
This is
online.
Dwayne Bradfold here. Adam, explain to the council where this industry group that we work with, who pays their salary and how they're integrated into helping us. I think that would be helpful.
So I think Sandy addressed this a little bit, but so the Water Sports Industry Association is actually paid for by boat manufacturers and boat dealers. And like Sandy said earlier, their whole goal is to, one, provide a safe and fun experience for boat owners, but also do it in a very responsible way. And so most of what they are looking at is what are ways that legislation can benefit homeowners and boat owners, and ways that they can educate boat owners.
And I'll come back to that on this recommendation 5. So recommendation 5 would have several points, and we're looking at sort of phasing it in over time. If we had a little more opportunity, I could actually give you a demo, but it's a little harder to do that via Zoom because your phone, which knows your location, A, may not work very well here, and B, we're not anywhere near a lake. So it's a little harder to show the demo that way. So anyway, we proposed an application. I actually built a trial application using Google My Maps and demonstrated it to the committee. And that would be, so I'll just sort of play the scenario of a story. Somebody goes to a boat ramp. In addition to the current sign, there'll be a QR code on that sign at the boat ramp. It'll also be distributed to homeowner associations and things like that with a link. That link takes you to an application which is actually fairly inexpensive to produce for the county, and I can go into details if you want, but I would say under $50,000, maybe under $10,000 in terms of the basic guts of the GIS part of it, because it's basically an overlay to Google Maps so that when you click that QR code, you go to an application that's sitting on top of Google Maps, shows your location as a blue dot like you would in a car for directions. But what it will show is that 200-foot boundary from shore, because it's pretty hard for people to estimate what 200 feet is. And this will actually tell them, am I inside the line or I'm outside the line? Now, admittedly, just like on the freeways, some people violate the law, even if they know it. But at this point, it's very hard to know if you're violating the law. We want to make it easier for people to know if they're violating the law, because we think significant number of people will do the right thing if you make it easy for them. So this application, and it could, in a future version, show the best areas for wake surfing, because not only is that far enough from shore to be deep, because if it's 15 to 20 feet deep or deeper, the wakes are better, because if in shallower water, the wakes bounce off the bottom and cause other, I won't get into the details, but so we would like to show, particularly on big lakes like Lake Tapps, but Spanaway could see that too. This is the best place to wake surf. It also happens to be far enough from shore to not create damaging wakes. So here's a place where asking them to do this helps them and helps us. Any questions about how that would operate?
Any questions from the committee?
So it would look like an app, but it's really a web application. And so this next deal shows, no, that's my version. So it could be on the existing sign, see where the sign says maximum speed limit? We could have a piece of aluminum that has the QR code and a few words saying, download this app so you know where you are on the lake and what, whether you're inside the no wake zone or not. And it could be on a sign like that 60-mile-an-hour speed line, another sign like that. And I think at this point, many people are aware that when they see a QR code, it might be something that'll help them. So the next, I don't know if you have this. What's the next? Oh, you don't have this. Is it in your packets? Does it look like this?
No.
So when we did our public meeting last week, we realized that we were a little short in terms of photographs and maps and demos. So we added this in, and but this just shows an example of how that application would work. Okay, we are done with our recommendations, but we just wanted to address illegal discharge and abandoned or derelict vessels is a very large issue in the saltwater. We just felt we did not have enough time to address it. We wanted to bring these recommendations to you first, and it is also being addressed, maybe not very adequately, by the state as well. So thank you very much. I think I'm done. If you have other questions,
Yes, we have questions. All right, so going back to some of your recommendations, I was trying to squeeze one in there, but you go pretty fast. On the recommendations of changing the Pierce County Code to prohibit wakeboarding on Class C and D lakes.
I think that's 4, right?
Yeah. The only question I have is is there any pushback on any of this? Why this hasn't happened? This wake surfing and wakeboarding has been around for a minute, and I know there's been complaints for years. Is there any pushback on this, and why haven't we done this years ago?
Detective Bill.
Oh, you got a question. There you go.
So what has changed, right, over the years? Well, most people years ago on the lake taps, on some of the smaller lakes, they would use more like the flat bottom boats, and they would water ski. And then came wakeboarding, okay? And then the wakeboarding, they didn't need the big waves. What's changed is the vessel designs and what they do. Now they create their own surf. So now they have a 3 or 4 foot surf, and they're not attached to the vessels anymore. They can sit 4 or 5 feet off the edge of the boat, and they can actually surf the waves just like they are in Hawaii or California, and will ride those waves right to the shoreline. That's what's changed, the design of the boats and the activity of surfing compared to wakeboarding. And that's what we were trying to talk to you earlier, was there is a difference. Wakeboarders is like the skis, and then the surfing is you're not attached to the boat anymore, but you're still surfing the wave that it generates.
So we're catching up.
Well, I wake surfed in 2005. So yes, it was a thing, but it wasn't very common, and the boats generally didn't have ballast tanks. And then the ballast tanks kept getting bigger and bigger, and when you get the ballast tanks bigger, the boats have to be deeper, so they get more expensive. And there was no boating safety committee until 3 years ago. There was something around 2017, and I don't know the details of that. It lasted for a little while, but I don't know that there were any recommendations accepted.
Okay. Thank you for the answer, and we have more questions from the committee here, so don't go anywhere.
Real quick, add to that answer, there is a huge difference. I have a 2017 wake surf boat. The wake that my boat will put out with ballast and tabs is nothing compared to what a new 2024 wake surf boat will do. So the waves are getting larger and larger and larger.
We're responding to what boats are out there. Got it. Thank you. And we have more questions. Committee Member Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate all the work that went into this. It's been a long, arduous process to get to where you're at. You're correct. The revigoration of the Boating Advisory Commission came about 3 years ago. Once, in my district, District 1, it takes in lake taps. So that was my concern, that we needed to get that board up and running again. And so all you who volunteered to get on this committee, I appreciate it. I appreciate Skip Anderson's time that he had representing the coastal and the saltwater part. He's a great guy, runs a captain's school down in at the Fox.
I'm a student.
Okay, and he gave a lot, but there again there was a lot to deal with. Lake Taps, as you indicated, is a very large lake, not in square footage, but in shoreline.
Yeah.
I think there's over 45 miles of shoreline at Lake Taps. Quarter of that is within the city limits of Bonnie Lake. So we have to acknowledge the fact that there's this imaginary line that runs across a portion of Lake Taps that City of Bonnie Lake does patrol. So you have 2 marine patrols on Lake Taps. So we do have to coordinate whatever happens at the county level. Chief Barry needs to know what we're doing, so that way we're not doing 2 different things as far as code amendments. Some of the codes that were put in place for Lake Taps had to deal with, you brought up the rafting issue. The rafting issue is very touchy issue on Lake Taps. There is one cove that you cannot raft in, and of course that's Fairweather Cove, or 2.
Lake Ridge Cove is the other one.
No.
The one where the fire department, it's Fairweather Cove, and then there's also an Underway Cove, sorry. Detective Minion with the Sheriff's Department. There's actually 2 coves. There's the one where the fire station is, which is Lake Ridge, I'm not sure, it's got 2 names. It's Lake Ridge Cove, but then there's also Fairweather Cove as well. And they're underway only coves. They're on the north end of the lake.
Yeah, and that's due to the fire station, the
Correct.
narrow channel to get in there.
And that used to be an extremely large problem with boats going in there and partying and literally they would fill the cove up so much that the fireboat could not get out, and that's why we made that a underway only cove.
Okay, right, and that's where
By the way, several of us did ride-alongs with the Marine Services.
Okay, but you're recommending that we remove the no rafting from Fairweather?
Yes, because it's just pushed everyone to, what's the other one?
Behind Snag Island and
Bankers Cove and behind Snag Island. And those places, now it's condensed from 3 areas to 2 areas, and so now those areas are worse than they ever were.
And, I'm not arguing that point, but there again, Fairweather was brought forward in a previous council member because they were out with pitchforks and torches because of the activity in that cove. And I've been asked in the past to put no rafting in Lake Ridge, what I call Lake Ridge Cove. But it seems like in the last 2 years, things have kind of settled down.
Well, they've settled down because the public boat ramp is now enforcing the no parking along that road, and the parking area. So there's less boats coming from King County, which is primarily where they're coming from, to use Lake Taps. So the pressure is a little less the last couple of years. Is that about right?
Yeah, Bonnie Lake, there were two public ramps, one in the Pierce County Park, and that one has now moved to reservation only, is my understanding. I don't know if that'll carry forward to this summer. Bonnie Lake was the other one, and when Bonnie Lake was constructing a new soccer ball field, that was their trailer parking lot. So they had to temporarily remove that trailer parking, and they resorted to city residents only who could launch and then take their boat trailer home. They've since opened up a very limited number of trailer parking, and they're supposed to be, my understanding is, ramping that back up over the next couple of years, so that problem may return. It could just be a temporary reprieve.
Okay. Okay, so
So for those that are not on lake taps, I think it's important to understand there's 7 homeowners association. Each of them have a private boat ramp for the homes in that homeowner association. So it's a little different than our other lakes. There's the 2 public ones, one in Bonnie Lake and one at the north end.
And to be clear, we're not asking for rafting to come back. Rafting would still be prohibited. We're just asking for the anchoring and the drifting to both be allowed there. So rafting would not be allowed anywhere outside of the area it currently is off of the county park.
okay. Okay, one of the ongoing concerns with my colleagues in this council is enforcement. We can make all these code changes, these regulations, you can't do this, you can't do that, but how is the Marine Patrol going to respond to these changes, and can they enforce them?
That's actually 2 of the proposals we had were directly tied to enforcement. The first one, as Sandy mentioned, is the adding the bow wake measurement to the 5 mile per hour, because they can't enforce the 5 mile per hour, 1, and 2, some boats doing 5 mile per hour could be throwing a damaging wake, close to a bulkhead or dock, and minimizing the wake as well as the speed would give an enforcement tool. And the other one was the channels that were identified with the skiing to dock. I think when that law was originally passed, there was no wake surfing, there was no wake boarding, and so now in those channels, you don't have any skiers after, probably 9:30, 10 o'clock, because the lake's already starting to get rough. But you do have wakeboarders, and even I've seen some surfing and tubing go up and down those coves, which are narrow. There's swimmers off dock, so that's just dangerous and hazardous. So we looked for, and we've talked to the Marine Services unit, and they're like, we don't know who's going to or from, a house. So by adding that prohibition, that will make that easier to enforce as well.
Okay. I think that's kind of the comments that I wanted. Obviously, we have before us the recommendations, and now it's just a matter of how we're going to approach those recommendations as a council, and then attach a cost to them, because whether it be signage or just public outreach, someone's got to do it. And we need to just define who's going to do that, whether it's going to be parks, the council, or the sheriff's Marine Patrol. So, okay.
Thank you for those questions. You had something to add there?
Yes, sir. So, Fairweather Cove, we're not saying add rafting to that area. What we're saying is allow people to start anchoring or start drifting through there. So it will spread out some of the boats. Instead of being all in one cove or 2 coves, maybe we can kind of spread it out so it's a little easier on everybody.
And I wanted to say about the mapping application, if I have another couple minutes. So there's a GIS, I worked close to this area. There's a GIS application called buffering. It takes the lake boundary and you can buffer it a number, plus or minus, from that shoreline. So it's pretty much one line of code. Buffer the lakes inside by 200 feet. So that part is pretty easy. And the rest of it I did on Google My Maps for free in about a half hour. So I'm sure it's not perfect and needs to be more than that, but I don't think it's a very expensive proposition. The QR codes are free, and so the signage is probably the biggest expense, and those signs would cost like $100 if they were attached to an existing sign.
Looks like Committee Member Marley got another question.
Yeah, just clarification on your recommendation number 4. You just want to limit skiing to and from docks to be 6 to 10 a.m. on the lake taps?
It's allowed we propose it's allowed only during that time. Recommendation 3. And the current code says skiing. You know, we didn't debate a lot whether that could be, but that's the primary use of going to and from your dock. A wakeboarder, as you described, Council Member Hitchin, they do it sometimes, but not nearly as much. Because part of that is at 6 a.m., nobody really wants to get wet. And those skiers, some of them can start on the dock and end close to shore and really never get wet. We have some on our lake that do that, and they're almost my age.
Yeah, and I know that, you know, if you're a good skier, you know, you want to do it early in the morning because it's flat as can be. I know that Lake Tapps produced a lot of world-class skiers in the day because of the availability to ski off the docks. I'm a little concerned about telling property owners that they can't use their, docks to ski off of. I understand some of the coves are narrow and small and then get congested the later on in the days. I mean, in Lake Ridge Cove, 2 o'clock, you can't even get your boat through there because there's so many.
But we really have to look at the other side of that equation. It allows the officers to enforce a speed limit in that no-wake zone after 10 a.m., which is really the purpose of that recommendation.
Also, it's just two channels and 2 coves. And by doing the time limit we did, it still really is allowing the original intent of water skiers, because the water skiers are not going to be doing it after 10.
And that would be true on Spanaway. We have one spot.
Yeah. But technically, they could still start from the bulkhead.
Well, the issue is they're going to be exceeding the speed limit of the channel. So even if they start from their bulkhead as opposed to a dock, they'll be coming down the channel at faster than 5 miles an hour.
And creating a wake.
Okay.
So it just means we won't be enforcing that speed limit in those areas before 10 a.m., which I don't think there's a lot of enforcement before 10 a.m. anyway, because it really is later in the day when the problems begin.
And the other reason there too is the water skiers don't really generate a wake. I mean, they're going fast, but there's minimal wake. There's not an impact to the shoreline around them really. But the other activities that can take place under that, pulling a massive tube or surfing or wakeboarding, that does cause a larger impact on the channel. And I don't think that if those activities were, I don't know what the original drafters of the law would have thought, but I think they had skiers in mind based on the impact. So we tried to balance allowing the activity that was originally there and minimizing the other activities that could be harmful on those channels.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for those questions. Well, thank you for all the work on this, and thank you for the recommendations. And look, we got some more questions coming up now. Committee Member Denson, so you can't go away yet.
Actually, I don't know if my question is for you or for Ms. Kelly, but what are the next steps? We have these recommendations, and maybe the question is for the chair. what are the next steps here for considering those or deciding which ones we pursue?
Well, go ahead, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Committee Member Denson. So at this point, it would be a matter of drafting legislation. So it would be a member would need to sponsor and put forward the proposal.
Well, actually, the report in the appendix has the changes to the code. We anticipated that part. But there are some other things, whenever you're done, that I can add.
Go for it.
So I think it would be good to put me in touch with somebody in the GIS department and confirm what I'm thinking is not all that hard. I'm sure they're going to say it's harder than I think. So that we could prepare a budget estimate so that, and, get some estimates on the signs. So.
Yeah, when we draft legislation, our staff will do it. We take all the input and then we digest it out. So, yeah.
I'm wondering, too, so it could be a council member that recommends or puts this forward to sponsor. Could it also be agency request legislation from the sheriff department, since the sheriff department is leading this? I'm just asking, options.
I'm not sure.
All this talking, we got to get to the mic if you're going to talk. Thank you. I appreciate that. Folks are listening on.
I get it. Detective Minion again. So I am not sure exactly what the steps would be for the sheriff's department to actually draft something up and submit it. I believe that we brought this forward, and perhaps you guys could come up with some things we could help review it, and then maybe give our input a little bit before it's put into place.
Okay, just curious about the different options.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay, looks like we're good here.
Questions from the online people? Or are there?
I don't think there's any questions online.
Okay.
All right, appreciate that. Appreciate all your work on this. All right, so now we're moving to item number 6. Ms. Kelly, for the introduction.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 6, following in the marine theme, we have the Pierce County Marine Services Unit. That starts on page 36 of your packet. Today we have presenting is Detective Monty Minion. The Marine Services last presented to the Public Safety Committee on August 14th, 2023.
Thank you for being here today. I know you're busy last year, and it's good to get an update. So we're in between the seasons, so we can see what happened last year and see what's coming up for this year. So appreciate you being here.
Pleasure to be here, y'all. Detective Monty Minion with the Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Mock was not available today, so please allow me to take his place. So the Pierce County Sheriff's Department Marine Services Unit, we are comprised of 20 members. It is a extra duty assignment, which means our officers that are in the unit actually patrol the streets or do detective work, like myself. And we have 10 vessels that are available for using on patrols and rescue missions. We have 6 to 8 coxswains for the Puget Sound area that run the 36-foot safe boat named the Mundell.
For the audience and everybody here, what is a coxswain?
So a coxswain is a actual boat captain. We actually have gone through the flagship maritime course down in the port, and Skip Anderson runs that school. And basically, when we come out of that school, we have a 6-pack Coast Guard license that we are able to get. But we have 6 to 8 coxswains basically that are in charge of the 36-foot patrol boat Mundell. When we're on the boat, we are the lead officer in charge of the boat. We usually run a 2-man crew, so we'll have one of our 20 team members with us as well. And then depending on the situation, if it's an emergency call or something like that, then we'll have additional staff on board as well, such as divers and things like that. There are 7 trained swiftwater rescue operators within the unit as well, and they respond to emergencies on the river, on any of our rivers in Pierce County. We have 4 cross-trained with dive, which they go out and assist with giving rides. So it's kind of like the Navy for the Marines. Training and funding. Next slide. So each one of our members goes through the Marine Services 40-hour Marine Law Enforcement Academy in Kennewick. It's held in Kennewick every year, or Tacoma. I believe this year's is going to be in Kennewick. We also train 12 to 14 days per year. We do various types of training, both on the water. We also have to do a lot of swimming pool time. So I get my cardio in. There's equipment maintenance as well involved with that as well. We agree to work overtime shifts. That's how Marine Services shifts are staffed. It's all overtime for our unit members, and we run that from Memorial Day until Labor Day weekend. Funding comes from the county as well as Washington State Parks. Next slide. We also have specialized member training. We're currently in the process of training 4 new coxswains. We received several weeks of specialized training. Several members have obtained U.S. Coast Guard captain's licenses. Each one of our new coxswains will be given the opportunity to go down and take that same course that we've been through. Swiftwater members attend a week-long course and have 4 additional training days per year to stay up to speed on moving water type training and water rescue type training. We also do boating under the influence and basic advanced accident collision investigation classes that are offered by state parks. A lot of times we have to go out of state for those types of trainings as well. I've gone through both the basic and advanced marine collision investigation course, and I am the only active accident reconstruction person on the unit right now, which we're going to need to replace me. So, or at least train a couple more people, because I'm not going to be here forever.
So I got a question for you. So would you say that being in this unit, which is all of it's overtime, so you're doing your 40 hours plus there's overtime on regular patrol too, and then this additional specialty, which has specialties within sight of it, and all the extra training, and every hour you spent on a boat is overtime, so that's above and beyond. This is a huge lift. Not anybody can just walk into this unit before you can even, I mean, there's a lot of training. You got to get boat training or some swiftwater training, and there's all kinds of additional training on top of regular patrol training and all this other stuff. So, because I've heard some folks say, hey, why don't you just throw the school resource officers during summertime on the boat with y'all and stuff like that. I was just throwing that you're showing here that there's a lot to this.
Yes,
and how important this is.
And that being said, we are understaffed right now as it is with trying to man patrol. And so to take school resource officers and try to put them on I understand that somebody proposed maybe a seasonal full-time Marine Services unit, and doing that through supplementing them with school resource officers. We do have a couple of school resource officers that are on our unit, but that being said, we're taking from patrol at that point, because there's demands for vacation, that kind of thing, that come up off of patrol during the summertime as well. And we just don't have the budget or the manpower to staff a full-time unit. And it takes a long time to train somebody up to actually be out and running the boats. So yeah, it's very labor intensive.
Thank you.
Yep. So we train with other specialized units, such as dive, search and rescue, canine units, SWAT, and our air ops units. We train day and night, and we train rain or shine. It doesn't matter, because usually when somebody gets in trouble, it's not under 90-degree, beautiful sunny days. It's dark of night, storms, wind, rain, and big waves. So we have to train in those conditions so that we're prepared to meet the call when it comes.
So could you give an example? Because some people are like, SWAT team. What would be a good example of training with a SWAT team like out here in the Bay?
So we have several ferries that run back and forth to all our islands within the Puget Sound area, within our area of responsibility. So we would have the team on the patrol boat Mundell, and we actually we did this last spring. We would do vessel approaches on our vessel while the ferries are moving between Anderson Island and that. We'd come up and actually do boat-to-boat contact, and then our team would move from our boat to their boat, simulating like terrorist takeovers and things like that, or maybe a situation where they would need to somehow board a vessel. And so we did a lot of practice with the ferry system. We also practiced doing a lot of stuff in the port, because obviously the Port of Tacoma is a huge safety issue for us and Tacoma to deal with, and it's actually Pierce County's responsibility for safety on the port as well. Did you have something to say?
Detective Bill Foster, there's also been some real-world situations where we've used MSU on lake taps, where we've had situations at domestic violence or someone injured, where we had to have a SWAT member on our vessel as we approach from the water side. There's also been situations where people have held spouses, again, domestic violence, on other vessels out in one of the bays where we had to approach with our vessels. So there have been real-world situations where that has occurred.
Thank you for highlighting that, yes.
Yep.
And we have another committee member with a question. Committee member Denson.
Yes, just a quick question. We have quite a few calls on the Purdy Spit for capsized vessels or people in the water. Is that you all that responds to that, or is that our fire department?
So we, depending on availability, so there's only 6 coxswains on board that run the Mundell. So depending on, and then also a lot of our coxswains, we're not super close to the Puget Sound area. So it takes us a little bit to actually respond to the boat. So it'll take us 30, 40 minutes to get to the boat. But yes, we are responsible for responding to the Purdy Spit. That being said, we work in concert with the fire department, and they will try to respond as well. But we are responsible ultimately for making a response out there for anything like that.
How about the waters in Colvos Passage? Like if there is somebody in the water under the Narrows Bridge, is that you guys?
That is us.
That's you. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And in addition to your excellent question, I'm sure there's other assets, other departments out there, State Fish and Wildlife. I'm sure, do they get the calls too if they already have a boat out there? Do you know they have a boat out?
Usually what happens is like, I know Gig Harbors has vessels out. We're not always in tune with what the State Department of Fish and Wildlife is doing, but they do have patrol vessels out, and they'll be listening to marine vessel radios and things like that. So yes, anybody, even civilian vessels, will be listening to marine radio out there, and if there is an emergency that comes up, we have a lot of people that can respond and help.
Okay. Thank you. Good question. All right.
Okay, next slide. We train with other marine services units, TPD, Gig Harbor PD, Department of Fish and Wildlife, state parks, fire departments, Coast Guard. So we have had training days with them as well. And we do a lot of interagency cooperation. So the next slide will show some of that. This is actually up at American Lake at their North American Lake Sap Park, where our vehicle had driven into the water down there, and we were actually helping with the recovery of that. We also do some training with firearms out there on the lake as well. So that's at Alder. We usually try to go out once a year because, unfortunately, things go sideways sometimes, and we have to be able to understand that shooting from a vessel is completely different than shooting on land. Everything's moving vertical, side to side. It's a really interesting situation to put yourself in. So, next slide. Next one. That's the lake. That's the lake one that I was looking at. Patrol. So, marine law enforcement. We are responsible for patrolling Puget Sound and the lakes of unincorporated Pierce County. We do vessel safety inspections on the Washington State Patrol sector system, which is getting all revamped, and I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like here in the future, but we're going to see, and we're going to move forward with it. We enforce state and local boating laws, So anything that you guys enact, we are responsible for enforcing those things. We do accident investigations. I've done 2 serious boating accident investigations this last season. And one of them was a young man sustained a serious brain injury, almost died down near Steilacoom Lake, or Steilacoom, city of Steilacoom on Puget Sound after a boating collision that he was involved in. So very violent, very dangerous when boats collide together. So we're in charge of maritime security. So like on the port, if anything were to happen at the port, we're responsible for that. We also do asset security as well. If important things would happen, like the golf tournament that happened down here at Chambers Bay, we actually helped patrol the perimeter there and help with that. Stolen vessel investigations as well. We're involved in that. The majority of our activity is during the summer, typically recreational boating during those times of year that it's at its height. Okay, next slide. These are our patrol areas. We've patrolled 235 miles of saltwater shoreline and have over 200 lakes bigger than 5 acres in size. We have Puget Sound, Lake Tapps, Lake Alder Lake, Spanaway Lake, Kapowsin, Tanawax, Ohop, Clear Lake, Silver Lake, Rap, John Hart's, it goes on, and then all of our rivers, of course. So, on with our next slide. Oh my goodness, let me see if I can get this. So 24-foot boating safety, or we did 2024 boating safety inspections. The Marine Services Patrol activity from Memorial Day through September was 552 total inspections. We did 290 of those inspections on Lake Tapps. We did 196 at South Pierce County Lakes, and 66 inspections on Puget Sound. And that's kind of coincides with how many actual vessel hours that we have on each one of the lakes. So.
Okay, we've got some lights lighting up over here, so we'll start with Committee Member Hitchin. She's got some questions.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Detective, for the work you do. I had a question about the Washington Boaters driver's license, the boater education card. When you're doing these safety inspections, are you also looking at least one person on the boat has one of those?
So we are requesting to see their boater safety cards. 9 times out of 10, they do not have them. We do have a way to look them up through our records system at South Sound 911. However, not all of it. It's not always reliable. Especially some of the newer ones usually get put in, but the older ones are not there. But yes, we are requesting to see their cards. And if they don't have it, then we can write citations on that.
Okay, and then the other part is non-motorized vehicles, people on canoes and kayaks and paddle boards without life jackets. Do you also engage with that population, or is it mostly motorized?
So that is, so per state parks, in Washington State Parks, those folks that are on the non-motorized vessels are actually at the highest risk for drowning. And so yes, we do pay attention to all of those. I contact a lot of paddle boards, a lot of kayaks, a lot of canoes, and we're always checking to make sure they have their 2 items that they need to have, a whistle and a life jacket. And we make sure, and if they don't have it, they get to go to shore. So we take them back to where they departed from.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sometimes they get forgotten because they don't make a big wake, but like
Yeah,
you said,
actually,
they're some of the most at risk.
Yeah, and actually we just learned that the state is actually putting on some programs called Paddle Safe for youth to teach them about paddling. So we're going to try and see what we can do to maybe get some of that down here in the Pierce County area. It's usually done through the schools, from what I understand, with the Paddle Safe program. So
okay,
there's opportunities there.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Questions? All right, Committee Member Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to just ask a couple of questions here. On these safety inspections, if you find a violation, what do you do?
So we have options. We can, usually if it's a major safety thing like life jackets missing or something like that, we'll issue a citation. If not, then we let them know. Because our main goal as Marine Services officers is to educate the public about boater safety and the things that are necessary. And so if they're missing something simple like a whistle or a horn, then we either, one, give them a whistle if we have one available, which we do get some of that stuff from state parks. We provide that equipment for them. But, normally we could give them verbal warnings as well. So it's mostly contact, educate, and then if it's something major like blatant life jackets not on the boat and things like that, then we write the citation.
Okay, to follow up on that, do you have a way to track these violations on repeat offenders if you see them out next weekend?
We do not. Now, what we have done in the past is we've actually tried to keep a list on we all run computers on the boat, and we have a designated we have a designated Marine Services area on our hard drives where we can go in and say, okay, I contacted this vessel on this day and gave them a warning for this, this, and this. We've tried that. It's very labor intensive because one, you're trying to do your inspections. Two, you're very busy because there's maybe two boats, if there's two, on Lake Tapps on any given summer. And so we're trying to get through inspection, move on, find the next one, inspection, move on, find the next one. And so documenting all of that would add an hour or two to our day, just documenting who we all contacted and putting it in a system to where and then our officers would have to go back and then track that somehow and look through the past 2 months of contacts to see if this vessel has been contacted before.
Okay. Then my other question is, I was just skimming ahead. You have nothing in the slide deck that shows any of the tickets that you have written on whether it be Lake Tapps or any of the other lakes.
Right.
What does it take to get a ticket on a lake?
What do you mean? What is it? I'm trying to understand the question.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to know how many tickets you wrote while on patrol. And if you didn't write tickets, what is the threshold that gets you to write a ticket versus a warning?
So like I said, it would be the seriousness of the violation. Like I give tickets for major safety violations such as reckless boating, negligent boating, your PFDs and things like that. Those are kind of mandatory tickets as well. Smaller violations like maybe a speed zone violation or something like that, we go, hey, you need to slow down. Did you see that? It's just like any traffic ticket. Okay, sometimes I pull somebody over and they're just like, my head was in the clouds. I don't really understand. I didn't realize I was going that fast or whatever. And we try to accommodate and educate people instead of making it a negative contact with law enforcement. We try to make it a positive one.
Which I appreciate the education part, but I'm just kind of curious to really, we used to get a breakdown every year on tickets written. I haven't seen it since the pandemic. So I'm just kind of curious to see really how many incidents happen where there's negligence.
So each shift reports their documentation to the sergeants. Sergeants then create the information that you're seeing here with all the final tallies that they give to the state. The personnel have changed hands, and I don't see that information posted. I could probably find that information for you. I know that because of sector, the tickets used to go from from the officer to the precincts to the courts, and now they're done electronically. They're going to the state sector system goes to the courts, so we're kind of out of that loop right now. But maybe I can look for that information and find out. But Detective Minion's right. As any officer has the discretion to give a citation. If you find that you have a kayak and he's 20 feet from the dock and he's rented the kayak and maybe there's not enough life jackets because the rental company didn't give it to him, I would turn around and say, hey, get back to shore and grab another life jacket. Tell them that there wasn't two in the canoe. And then I would not give that person a ticket. Now, if that person is on a jet ski and they're flying around Lake Tapps and they're being crazy and I come up to them, I'm doing an inspection, they don't have their life jacket on them, I would cite them and give them a citation or a ticket. Does that help with that?
I'm just kind of curious to see how many of these inspections or interaction between the boaters actually end up being in a ticket. I'm not asking because you're never going to be, a cost recovery through ticketing on a lake or the coast here. But I'm just kind of curious to see what rises to that level. Also, you can get back to me later, is any accidents? You brought up accidents. How many accidents actually happen on our lakes, and do you must keep track of those? So if you could get back to me on that also.
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you.
Good questions. All right.
Okay. Next slide. So we have other functions such as search and rescue function, disabled boaters. So we go out and render assistance when needed on the sound. Sometimes we ask them to call the boat company that goes out and does that kind of stuff for disabled or broken down boats. There's a company out there on the saltwater that usually responds to help out with that. Missing boaters, swimmers, and divers. We have missions every year regarding missing swimmers and divers and boaters. We do flood response and help with evacuations if needed. Swift water rescues, anyone that's down on the any of our local rivers that gets themselves in trouble, we respond to help with that. We do body recoveries. We assist with dive missions, whatever those might need to be. All Marine Services members are on call 24/7. So if my pager goes off, or my phone goes off, that was old school. Like I said, almost 30 years. If my phone goes off, I am required to answer the call for service. We have a 30 to 60 minute response time depending on where we're at in the county and if we're on or off duty at the time that the call goes. Next slide. So mission types, top left is a swift water call where we had divers doing some kind of either training or some kind of a rescue mission. As you can see, there was a helicopter crash in Lake Tapps, and that's where that photograph there on the right, upper right, was from. Another swift water mission in the lower left, and collision that resulted in someone needing help along swift water there in that automobile. We train with our dives, our dive team, and most of us all know how to do dive support type things when we're on shore. When we're doing searches from shore, our Marine Services unit guys can all get off onto shore and assist with doing shore searches in the swim area. This is at the swim area on Lake Tapps, up the north Lake Tapps Park area, and we're actually training and teaching the new guys how to tend divers and how that goes. We're also active in community education. If something comes up like duck days or something like that, we're sometimes asked to respond with our boats and other equipment and just be there as a service to the public and answer questions and allow the kids to climb around on the boats and things like that. So we do that time. We do maritime and safety events, Washington State Fair, UP Duck Days, Edgewood Picnic, National Night Out, Touch a Truck, and the School Boat Safety Talks. So we go and do that as well. Next slide. So this is our 36-foot safe boat, built in 2013. It's the Mundell. It's got twin 6.7 diesel Cummins motors, 900 horsepower total. Its primary duties is to respond to calls for service on Puget Sound, and we also use it to do our patrols on Puget Sound as well.
So, where was that boat built?
That boat was built up in Bellingham, or Bremerton, excuse me. And we actually got to go to the facility and tour that. It was actually pretty cool. Pretty cool to see that boat under construction. So,
Committee Member Denson.
I thought you were going to ask, when can we get a ride on the boat? Right?
Oh,
Have you already been on
it?
Well, that's why you didn't ask.
You got a coxswain and a crew member right here. We can go right after the meeting.
Yes.
All right.
Very good. All right. Yeah. Good stuff.
So next slide. This is our dive support boat. It's a 2005 29-foot Alomar with a single Cummins engine. It's used primarily for dive operations. It's got, as you can see by the picture, it has a ton of dive equipment on there. Those big coils on the back are all umbilicals for different underwater vehicles that we have, and other sonar equipment and things like that we use to do dive missions. So, next slide. This is a 22-foot life-proof patrol vessel. This one stays up on taps all summer long, and that one you will see on lake taps all summer. This is a 2002 20-foot Bolton patrol vessel, and it's used to do patrol on both saltwater and freshwater. If we need it, we use it. We have a, go ahead. Next one's a North River 2005 21-foot North River Commander. It's got a Hamilton jet motor in it. Just got a brand new motor upgrade on it. So it's ready for service this year. It was having some difficulties, but we should be able to get a lot of service back out of this one for a little while longer. We have 1901, which is a 1998 19-foot Alomar rigid hull inflatable. It's got a 250 outboard on it, and it's used primarily on freshwater for patrolling our lakes, all of our lakes. Next one, 1801, 18-foot, exact same boat as the 19-foot boat, and it responds to freshwater and patrols all of our lakes. This one's a little bit easier to get into the smaller lakes down in South Pierce County, so we use that one a lot down there. M3, this is a older boat, 16-foot Alomar. It's built to, it has a Mariner jet engine in it that we can use it on some of the swiftwater stuff, but it's mostly, we use it for lakes. So, go ahead. We have several swiftwater response boats to include all of these rafts and that they use on the swiftwater. Some of them have 25-horse jet motors on them that they use, but some of them also are just paddle driven.
Awesome. Awesome. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, there they go. Okay. We'll go with Committee Member Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the name of your mascot on slide 25?
On Slag 25?
Yeah, the last one.
Oh.
What's the name of it?
Bad Bart.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I thank you for the report. It's nice to see one again, and I appreciate all that you do, and I know you're getting towards the end. Hopefully we can get some new folks in there, but the challenge will always be manpower, budget.
Yep.
It is a costly operation to run, and So, maybe we can come up with some creative ideas to help out. But other than that, I think looking forward to a safe boating season coming up. And so with that, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, and we'll go with Councilmember Kruger.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, I noticed some of the age on those boats. I assume they're just so well taken care of, they don't age. Is that?
That's not true.
Okay.
That's not true. Some of those boats are due for replacement, and we're working on, we do have a boat in the works right now. There's a 22-foot SLX jet boat that is it's built in Idaho. It's currently under construction and being worked on to come down here and replace some of our older boats that need to be replaced so that we can have good response on the rivers.
Okay, that sounds pretty fancy. I don't
yeah.
understand engines, but they pretty wild. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Well, I will speak to that too. That company in Idaho, I've ridden those boats on that river there, and then also the Puyallup River, and they scream. They're great. And also you have Almars, which used to be built here in Tacoma, and they moved it. But it was built in Tacoma, and safe boats. But I have a couple, 3 questions for you. And you've been doing this for a long time, so you probably were doing this before they mandated boater education. And I guess this is an opinion on yourself. Have you seen any different when it comes to safety boat operations before and then after we started mandating the boater educational cards?
It really depends on the person and their intent to actually learn something when it comes to that program. Usually the state parks program that they use for education is just a slideshow, and they give you so much, you have to pay attention for so much time, go through the material, and then you take the test and you get your card. So it really depends on the person. If they want to listen or actually take the information in, then they learn something. If not, then they don't. It's about 50-50. When I come across a lot of people with their cards and they're violating, I go, "You took the test, right?" "Well, yeah." "You know this rule." "Well, I didn't really pay attention." Or they make some other excuse about, "Well, I forgot," or whatever. So and then you can't verify that person actually took the test either. It could have been somebody else take the test for them and they get the card. So it's about 50-50.
Okay. Well, it's interesting to know about that. My other question is about community education. I think this term's been used before in different other programs, like know before you go, right? And especially when it comes to safety and things like that. Is there any outside support, either from the state or anything like that, when it comes to boater education, know before you go, so before they even see you for an inspection, or maybe have their boat inspected before they even get to the dock, they have this sticker. I know they do it with commercial vessels. If there's any outside support for something like that.
So there are some actual outside boating education courses that are done locally. Some of the yacht clubs actually put on some boater safety stuff. I'm actually involved in some of that. I teach the law enforcement side of it and the rules of the road portion of it. So yes, there are some other, like Power Squadron is one that I could think of that comes to mind, but there are other educations like Flagship Maritime gives education as well for maritime education. So yes, there are other opportunities. We, as a Marine Services unit, we can, I have been through a education course to actually teach the boater safety course for someone's Washington State boater safety card. We haven't put on a class. It's mostly trying to acquire necessary materials and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay. Another thing I was asking about being proactive with safety, kind of along those lines a little bit. We always know that there's people who do rafting on the rivers and things like that. And, after every flood, the river changes. There's the term called strainers. Sometimes the whole river could be blocked with a strainer. Do you support any of your swiftwater rescue guys that like float the river in early spring to see what's down there and try to clear the way before somebody launches in Ording and then gets stuck on a strainer or drowns halfway? You know how hard it is between Puyallup and McMillan to get back there.
We're really not trained in clearing any obstructions like that, and it would be a very large liability on the department, I believe, if we were to take that on. Plus, I mean, you have to be knowledgeable about water hydraulics and how to move objects and things like that are in the way like that don't cause other damage farther downriver and things. So
but those are things to be aware of. Like every year, the river could change the pathways of it. Okay.
And we try to do through social media, through the sheriff's department on our boating safety, we try to do announcements such as at the spring of the year, be aware the water, it might be sunny and warm out, but the water temperatures are super cold, or rivers are extremely dangerous. Be sure you wear your PFDs and make sure that you're paying attention and staying away from obstructions in the water. So we try to do some kind of a public safety announcement through that. Now, how many views do we get from that? I don't know. That would be something for our social media folks, but.
Yeah. And that is, I can't remember, we had somebody through the committee that talked about that before, what's unique for the Pacific Northwest, Pierce County. When there's national boater safety laws, they don't take into account of the coldness that is here. You could be an Olympic swimmer and drop into lake taps and then drown because it is so cold here. Or you have visitors from other places and don't really realize those type of things. So, we got some people to have more questions here. So, Committee Member Morrell, I could ramble on about this. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure, because I attended the meeting the other night. And I know that the Sheriff's Department is in charge of the meetings. The Marine Patrol is in charge of the meetings. Do you guys have all the tools you need to make sure that you're conducting a public meeting in the proper manner and posting minutes and agendas and recording?
So we have a person dedicated to keeping track of the minutes, taking notes, and posting all of those minutes on our website. And we have cameras available to us to actually put the meeting on Zoom. And I believe we're doing an adequate job with that.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because there was some challenges at the last meeting, and I know that she was doing a great job trying to get everything online.
Yep.
But, any support that we could give, I want to make sure that you ask for it.
I will check with Stacy to make sure that she's still able to make sure that the meetings are broadcast the way they are. And then also we did give adequate time to the notification of the public to make sure that the public was aware that their meeting was going on. And we always encourage people to show up in person. So they can come in person, they can view it online via Zoom. And so I think we're satisfying that.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, again, thank you. It's great that you highlighted you not just enforce boating laws on a lake. There is so many different avenues that you guys do, and it's a lot of stuff that you do. So I appreciate you and your whole team, and thank you to the whole team. I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other business for the Public Safety Committee? Okay. Ms. Kelly, update. There we go. You have a question for us?
Well,
just hold on. If you're going to hold on, go ahead.
On this topic.
Well, if you can do it in a minute.
Yeah.
So, two things. I think the listserv operation of people getting notifications about our meeting is not working well. And so they're posted on the website, but if you don't go to the website, you probably won't know about it unless one of us emails our constituents. And second thing, you may not be aware, but to pass the boater education thing takes 5 or 6 hours because each page is timed and you can't hit next until 45 seconds. And after 6 hours, nobody is paying any attention. They're just waiting to press the button. So it's a pretty ineffective setup, I think. It's just a question and a comment.
Thank you very much. All right, we're back to other business, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Herrera. Your only other business is to go over the agenda for highlight what's coming up on your next meeting, which is going to be March 24th. We have a presentation requested by Superior Court on Superior Court interpreter services. They're going to speak about current programming, challenging to providing services, artificial intelligence role in providing services, and then any potential impacts from pending legislation.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there's nothing else, then we're adjourned.